Good morning. Today we are going to talk. I'm going to talk on a topic: saliva and its role in diagnosis of oral and systemic diseases. So we have seen there are hundreds of salivary, tiny minor salivary submucosal glands, as well as parotid, submandibular, and sublingual larger glands, which work together to create saliva, which is a complex fluid. So saliva is quickly becoming a popular choice of diagnostic tool because it is non-invasive, easy to use and collect, and less expensive than conventional diagnostic methods like blood and tissue samples. So this is about the salivary gland and the saliva, why it is used as a diagnostic tool. And we know salivary glands are exocrine glands, that is they have ducts rather than the endocrine which do not have ducts. They are compound because they have multiple branching acinar cells. And it is tubuloacinar, where it has both tubular and acinar formation, and it is a merocrine gland compared to the holocrine or the apocrine. Now talking about the control of salivary secretions. We know salivary glands secrete saliva, and how is it controlled? So the autonomic nervous system normally controls the salivary secretions. We know autonomic nervous system consists of parasympathetic as well as sympathetic innervation. So each gland has both these innervations. So the parasympathetic outflow originates in the salivary nuclei of the medulla oblongata and synapses in the submandibular and otic ganglia. So in the picture if we see, so this is the superior salivary nucleus, inferior salivary nucleus located in the medulla oblongata. Superior salivary nucleus comes to the submandibular ganglion where it relays the nerve fibers to the sublingual and the submandibular salivary glands. Whereas the inferior salivary nucleus comes through the glossopharyngeal nerve to the otic ganglion and supplies the parotid gland. So this is the nuclear supply from the parasympathetic, whereas sympathetic ones comes from the superior cervical ganglia, which is the sympathetic innervation. So what does this parasympathetic and sympathetic nerve innervation do in a salivary acini? So in the acini there are receptors for the neurotransmitters which are delivered through the sympathetic as well as the parasympathetic nerve. For the sympathetic nerve, the receptors are beta 1 and alpha 1 receptors. Beta 1 adrenergic, alpha 1 adrenergic. And for parasympathetic, it is muscarinic, which is 1 and 3 type, and B8. So these are the receptors. This is a acinar cell, and this acinar cell, after the receptor receives the neurotransmitter, then there are some signaling pathways after which the salivary secretion starts. So what does this parasympathetic stimulation do? It speeds up the secretion by all the salivary glands, whereas sympathetic innervation provokes the small amounts of very thick saliva, which is more proteinaceous, which we saw in the last seminar. And any object in the mouth can trigger a salivary reflex. So normally there is small amount of saliva which is produced already, but when there is an object in the mouth, it can stimulate the salivary reflex. So the salivary nuclei are also influenced by the other brainstem nuclei as well as by the activities of higher center. So not only does the food stimulate the salivary secretion, the smell of a food or even thinking about food increases the salivary secretion because of this. And irritating stimuli in the esophagus, stomach or intestines also speeds up the production of saliva as does a nausea. So when there is a nauseating feeling, there is increased salivary secretion. So increased salivary production in response to unpleasant stimuli helps reduce the stimulus by dilution, by rinsing or by buffering strong acids or bases. That's the reason for the increased salivation when there is an unpleasant stimuli. So we have seen about the parasympathetic and sympathetic stimulation. Now, what are the two modes of salivary secretion? So there are two-stage model of saliva formation. First, there is a molecular mechanism in the acinar secretion, and there is a ductal modification of saliva. So these are the two steps which happen during a salivary secretion. So when we see an acinar cell, so I will just show a picture. Okay, this is the stage 1 of salivary secretion. I can just show. So this is a parasympathetic mode of salivary secretion. What happens? This is a muscarinic receptors. There are lot of receptors on the basolateral side of the acinar cell, and this is the apex. So here we see lot of channels and the receptors. The muscarinic receptors are stimulated by the parasympathetic nerve, which activates the G protein and which stimulates the phospholipase C, which comes to form the inositol triphosphate, which is IP3. This one stimulates the Golgi apparatus, which stores the calcium inside the acinar cell to secrete the calcium here. So normally the acinar cell at rest doesn't have any calcium here. very less amount of calcium to stimulate these calcium activated channels present on the basal as well as the apex. So this stimulates the calcium release. Once the calcium is released, there is a calcium activated potassium channel and all these co-transporter channels also allows the ions to pass inside. Once there is potassium inside and there is a sodium which comes through the junctions here into the lumen. This is the lumen here, and this calcium activated chloride channel also gives the lumen here. So once sodium and chloride are increased in this area, there is osmotic channels which are aquaporin channel which opens and lets the water come inside. Where does this water come from? The blood capillaries which are present on the outside, they from the plasma, then the water comes inside this lumen. This is the sympathetic or parasympathetic stimulation. Whereas when there is a sympathetic stimulation, what happens? The beta adrenergic receptors, they act on the G protein, which act on adenyl cyclase, and this converts ATP to ADP, which stimulates the protein kinase, and there are a lot of proteins which are stored as vesicles here in the apex. So when there is a trigger, these vesicles are let out by snare proteins, which are like a ziplock, where the vesicle membrane and the plasma, acinar membrane get fused and then release the proteins present into the lumen. So the protein secretion as well as electrolyte and water secretion happens by both the sympathetic as well as the parasympathetic stimulation. So that is what mentioned here. So there is a receptor activation where the muscarinic and adrenergic receptors trigger distinctive pathways. As I said, the muscarinic receptor triggers the IP3 calcium pathway, whereas the adrenergic receptor stimulates the cyclic AMP pathway for the secretion. So in the signal transcription, as I said, the pathways are stimulated, and the ion channel activation, as I showed in the figure, the ion channels are activated and the osmotic gradient is created. Next, the water transport happens through the aquaporin 5 channels, which facilitate rapid water movement into the lumen. And then the protein exocytosis, as I mentioned, the snare proteins mediate fusion of secretory vesicles with the apical membrane, and they release the proteins into the lumen. Now, what has happened? So if this is the acinar cell, here the saliva is, the primary saliva is formed. The primary saliva is isotonic. It is not hypertonic, it is isotonic. Isotonic in the sense it resembles the plasma. So its osmolality is resembles the plasma only. It will not resemble the saliva. So in the primary secretion enters the ductal system. Now we come to the ductal modification, where the initial isotonic fluid, which is plasma-like, enters the intercalated ducts from the acinar. So this fluid contains the full complement of proteins, but requires significant ionic modification to achieve its final complement. So what happens? There is the sodium potassium exchange is in the intercalate, in the striated and the excreted duct, there is a sodium and potassium exchange channel, where the basolateral sodium potassium ATPase creates an electrochemical gradient necessary for ion transport, where the sodium is actively reabsorbed. So actually what happens, there is a reabsorption of sodium and chloride from the primary saliva, and there is entry of bicarbonate and potassium inside the lumen of the intercalated ducts, the striated duct and the excreted duct. So, but the water is not permitted outside the acinar cells. Why? There are tight junctions between the ductal cells which prevent the significant water reabsorption despite the developing osmotic gradient. So this relative impermeability, water is crucial for maintaining the hypertonic nature of final saliva, which is 30 to 60 milliosmol per liter, where initially it was around 300. So initially it was around 300 milliliter, like a similar to plasma. Now it has become a hypertonic saliva, which is secreted into the lumen of the excreted duct. And what does this saliva contain? It contains 99% water and is an exocrine solution. So proteins make up to 0.3%, inorganic substances 0.2%, and the organic molecules make up the remaining. So enzymes such as amylases, peroxidases, lipase, lysozyme, lactoferrins, kallikreins, cystatins, hormones and growth factors are examples of organic components, whereas sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, chloride and carbonates are inorganic components. So there are around 3000 protein components found in saliva. Over 90% belong to the following classes. Though there are 3000 proteins, we have alpha amylases, protein-rich proteins, mucins, salivary cystatins, statecrins and PB peptide, which are the commonest found in the salivary excretion. And what does the saliva do? We know it is a lubricant, it helps in taste and digestive functions, it has immunological functions, and then it prevents from infection like antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral, all those properties are given by the saliva. What are the salivary secretion disorders? So we know the physiology, how it happens, and saliva is secreted. What happens in a salivary secretion disorder? This can be due to many medical conditions, therapies, drugs, even foods, which can cause salivary disorders. One is less secretion, the other one is more secretion. Why less secretion? Medications for a wide range of conditions, both mental and physical, are available are the cause for this xerostomia. So these include anxiety, depression, nausea, hypertension, heart disease, bronchodilators, and muscle relaxation. So here these medications are almost it comes under the term of anticholinergics. We know that muscarinic receptors are necessary for the salivary secretion, and when that pathway is blocked, it causes decreased secretion of saliva. So when a patient complains of xerostomia, first we should rule out whether the patient is under any anticholinergic drugs, which is the reason for xerostomia. Once it is ruled out, then we can go for the other varieties. Even medications like for the anxiety, depression also have a potential effect on the salivary secretion. Whereas sialorrhea is increased secretion of saliva, which is a problem of neuromuscular control. There is excessive production of fluids, not only saliva, but other fluids are also most produced in abundance, like tears. And additional potential reasons for sialorrhea include malignancies of the head and neck, surgical or radiation-induced abnormalities in the head and neck or the upper gastrointestinal tract. So we know the salivary secretion disorders as xerostomia and sialorrhea. Now saliva as a diagnostic tool. So before going into the diagnosis, we should know what all we should look in the saliva for the diagnosis. So we know we can isolate DNA, RNA from the saliva, which can be used for identification of very infection or diagnosing carcinomas of head and neck. In forensics also it is used. And we can identify the proteins or mucins for diagnosing the carcinomas of head and neck. Immunoglobulins for diagnosing viruses, and drugs and their metabolites are also expelled in saliva, which can be used to monitor drug abuse. Or we can detect virus and bacteria and cellular material for diagnosing head and neck carcinoma. So these are the biomarkers which are used in for diagnosing many pathologies. It can be used to detect either oral diseases as well as systemic diseases. Oral diseases like caries, periodontal diseases, oral cancer, Sjogren's syndrome, all these can be detected by detecting one of the biomarker here. So which can be used to detect how the patient is more susceptible to caries or periodontal diseases. So in systemic diseases, so in oncology, detection of oral, pancreatic and gastric cancers through biomarkers like MIR31, which is miRNA, and proteins such as CA15P. So this marker is used to help to diagnose the oral and or the GI tract carcinomas. In cardiology, we can detect the saliva alpha amylase and C-reactive protein to detect myocardial infarctions. Endocrinology, we can check all the hormones. In diabetes, we can use the salivary glucose and the alpha-2 macroglobulin linked to the diabetes, and HbA1c levels also they have studied in this population. And in neurology, salivary treat halos and phosphorylated proteins for Alzheimer's disease screening. So since saliva is a very easy to obtain sample, this can be used for screening purposes. And in infectious diseases, to detect HIV, hepatitis, COVID-19 using salivary antibodies and PCR techniques also can be done. So in forensic medicine, we can use DNA profiling, drug detection and toxicological analysis. And gastroenterology, use of calprotectin and lactoferrin for tracking inflammatory bowel diseases. So these many systemic diseases can be diagnosed with a simple saliva collection and using the exact biomarkers which are required for the diagnosis. So thus we conclude that saliva is a perfect substitute for blood. The research in saliva omics has an important role in identifying biomarkers of diseases and potential drug targets. Saliva omics also has a potential to diagnose diseases in their early stages. This is very important. In the early stage, if you are able to diagnose a disease with a very simple technique, then it is going to be a very big change. So new age of preventative and precision